It's set to be another huge week on the 2024 presidential campaign. Former Vice President Mike Pence is now officially a 2024 presidential candidate. New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu is out, and two other candidates are set to enter the race in coming days. Pence filed his paperwork with the Federal Election Commission today, declaring his run. He's expected to formally launch his bid on Wednesday in Iowa. And former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum are also jumping in. So for more on all of this, we have Aaron Navarro and Robert Costa joining us now. Aaron is CBS News political reporter, and Bob is CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent. Great to see you both here on set. Bob, I want to start with you because as all of these candidates are out there campaigning in Iowa, the investigations over Donald Trump loom. And I know you have some new reporting out today about the DOJ meeting with Trump's attorneys in the special counsel investigation. What's the latest?
Caitlin, a significant development today. Former President Trump's lawyers arrived this morning at the Justice Department in Washington. Didn't say a word to CBS's Rob Legary, who was outside the Justice Department. They went in stone-faced to have a high-stakes meeting with Justice Department officials ahead of a possible indictment of former President Donald Trump. That could be a historic indictment if it ever comes. But until that happens, until a decision happens, Trump's lawyers are making the case to prosecutors behind the scenes, as they did today for nearly 2 hours, that Trump should not be indicted. We hear that they are telling the investigators that Trump should not face any sort of charges for obstruction of how he handled these documents held at his Mar-a-Lago home, because they believe he was acting in good faith in talking about his own executive privilege. They also believe the investigators have overstepped when it came to how they dealt with attorney-client privilege during this investigation. But at this point, there's no sign the special counsel is backing off.
And so we'll hope to perhaps get an answer sometime soon. But as all that is going on, voters are starting to get another look at some of these other candidates in the race. I know, Aaron, you were out in Iowa for several days, braving the heat and the campaigns there. And I know you're talking to a lot of voters as well. And this is a time of the campaign where they actually get to meet these candidates face to face. I'm curious what you've been hearing. Are they eager to hear from another candidate from Trump, or did you still sense a lot of support for him?
There is a mix of curiosity and eagerness for these other candidates, specifically Governor Ron DeSantis, who launched his campaign in Des Moines, in Iowa, this past week. But overall, it was a sense of undecideds. We went to the roast and ride put on by Senator Joni Ernst, and it was great to get a hub of voters that are undecided, that lean a certain way, but aren't 100% committed to a certain candidate. Here's a collage of some of the voters we talked to this Saturday.
I like DeSantis. I'm hoping that him and Trump don't get into a real feud, because I'd like to see them work together some. Ideally, I guess I'd like to see Trump get another term and then go to DeSantis.
I feel like Trump, from the day he announced, has been persecuted and prosecuted, and he's still got so much done that I find it really hard to sort of jump ship, but the name calling doesn't help.
President Trump is I thought was a really great president, but we need somebody that can be in there for 8 years.
Voters were either on the side of Trump deserves another term because of what he was able to do in his first term in the presidency, or were just a little bit put off by the baggage that surrounds him, whether it's the investigations, some of the midterm losses. Now, who those voters gravitate towards, it seemed like it was Governor DeSantis, but Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, and Mike Pence's name were also brought up as options.
I mean, as you're talking about these other options, Mike Pence is getting in tomorrow. Bob, I know you're heading to Iowa to cover him. Chris Christie also getting in New Hampshire. How do you see, as this field grows, where they're, staking out claim in this race?
Former Vice President Mike Pence, he is mounting a comeback for someone who has already etched a place in the history books for his dutiful efforts on January 6, 2021 to certify that presidential election. So in a sense, it's a personal comeback, but it's also an attempt for a political comeback for a particular strand of American conservatism, what I would call traditional movement conservatism, that's not full of the grievance and populism that has so fueled Republican politics over the past decade. He's arguing that the Republican Party should go back to its Reagan-era principles, small government, hawkish foreign policy, tackle long-term federal spending. These are the bread and butter issues that Republicans talked about for years, but haven't so much in the same way in the past 5 to 10 years. And Pence is a test case for whether that version of Republican politics will ever return.
And you've covered Chris Christie for a long time now, too. He's set to announce his campaign in New Hampshire. Where does he fit in? Does he have a shot? I mean, Governor Sununu announced today that he's not running.
Sununu bowing out of the race could give Christie a real lane in New Hampshire, because if Sununu was in the race, it would be harder for Christie with his town hall style politics, that bit of pugnacious attitude, to generate a lot of traction in a small state like New Hampshire. But now there's a bit of a lane for Christie to come in. For Christie, the presidency is an enduring dream. I first covered him in 2009. He was the star of the GOP back in 2010, 2011. I know when we started covering politics, Christie was having these town halls, battling teachers every day, and he really created so much momentum for his own presidential ambitions that major Republican donors came to him in 2011 and said, Chris, we want you to run for president. He ultimately passed on running against Mitt Romney for the 2012 nomination. But ever since then, and his big win in 2013 in New Jersey's gubernatorial race, he has thought about running for the White House. He wants to be in the mix. But since the late 2013 with Bridgegate, Christie, really for over a decade now, has seen his political dreams challenged at every turn, but he's not giving up on the dream.
And he's going to have to compete with Ron DeSantis, right, who launched his kind of official campaign swing last week, went to all of these states, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and doing more fundraising this coming week. But Aaron, I know you've been covering him for a while now. I'm curious, being up close, what did you notice about kind of how he's been campaigning? I know you've been covering him in Florida. Now he's actually out on the trail. How were voters responding to him? What was kind of his main draw?
They swarmed him whenever he finished his remarks at his campaign events, but at the roast and ride especially. The question of can Ron DeSantis do retail politicking has kind of been there in this pre-campaign period. At the roast and ride was the most retail politicking I've seen from him. Before the event, giving ice cream to people, having his kids around, and then after his remarks, closing out the roast and ride, going table to table, listening to what voters had to talk to him about, whether that's ethanol or other Iowa-specific issues. And it seemed that DeSantis was listening and, actually talking to them about those issues. So it seems that he is ramping up that part of campaigning for him. But to him, the bread and butter for him will always be kind of the stump, highlighting what he's done in Florida and how he wants to change the country.
I mean, it's really interesting to think of someone like a DeSantis and a Christie. I mean, they are kind of looking at two different versions of the party. I mean, to your point, too. Do you expect, Bob, these candidates to start going after DeSantis in some way? I mean, we've started to see Nikki Haley take some shots at him. How big of a threat do you think these candidates see him?
Well, based on my conversations with the rival campaigns to Trump, they're not interested at this moment, early summer, to go after Trump. DeSantis, to me, is the most vulnerable on that first debate stage, because they see in DeSantis someone who is going to try to own the Trump alternative pathway in this nomination fight, and they think they need to get through him before they get to Trump. So no one's going to start just slinging political arrows at Trump thinking they can take down the political Goliath. Instead, they're going to try to go incrementally through DeSantis, take him on how he's handled Disney, take him on cultural issues, and argue that they present a better fit for the Republican Party. And they're out there in Iowa shaking hands and even getting on motorcycles if you're Mike Pence, because they believe they can outdo him when it comes to retail politics. DeSantis has had some criticism, or at least some muted observations about his retail political skills, although you might have an up-close view that's a little bit different than some of his critics.
That's right. Well, it was interesting. I mean, Iowa, the roast and ride especially. I saw him in New Hampshire when he was going from table to table. And his handlers almost kind of had to, usher him.
Yeah.
But on this past Saturday in Iowa, he really kind of just gravitated towards whoever wanted to chat with him. One other quick thing, I talked to Asa Hutchinson because he was watching DeSantis' speech from the back near the press area. He left about midway through. I followed him out and said, "What'd you think?" And without even, prompting him, he brought up the fight with Disney and criticized it. So showing these candidates are ready to go after the governor.
Yeah, and we'll see them on the debate stage, perhaps. We'll see who makes that debate stage in August. New criteria announced over the weekend as well. Bob, Aaron, great to see you. Happy travels on the trail.
You too.